Welcome to Ancient Sleep Stories channel, and thank you so much for joining us in another story from long ago. Tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Comment below and let us know. Tonight, travel into the secret chambers of medieval courts, where kings indulged in hidden desires and scandalous behaviors behind velvet curtains. Feel the hush of torches in stone halls, sense the tension in candlelit corridors, and let the whispers of power and taboo gently unfold. In the shadowy corridors of medieval castles, whispers of scandal and intrigue echo through time. The air is thick with the scent of forbidden desires and royal indiscretions. As we delve into the darkest corners of history, we uncover tales of kings whose appetites knew no bounds, whose perversions shocked even the most jaded of courtiers. Our journey begins in the court of King John, where a scandal of unprecedented proportions was unfolding. The year was 1394, and the streets of London were abuzz with rumors of a most peculiar nature. A figure known as John Rykener, or Eleanor, as she preferred to be called, had been arrested for the crime of sodomy. But this was no ordinary case of moral transgression. Eleanor, it seemed, had a penchant for dressing as a woman and plying her trade in the taverns and back alleys of the city. Her clients, it was whispered, included men of the cloth and nobles alike. But what truly set tongues wagging was the rumor that King John himself had partaken of Eleanor's services. The court was aghast. How could their monarch, the very embodiment of divine right, stoop to such debauchery? Yet as the investigation deepened, a web of intrigue began to unfold. Eleanor, it transpired, was not merely a common prostitute, but a spy in the employ of the king's enemies. Nights at the palace grew tense, filled with hushed conversations and furtive glances. Who could be trusted when even the king's bedchamber was not sacred? The scandal threatened to tear the very fabric of the realm asunder, as loyalties were tested and alliances strained. In the end, Eleanor vanished into the mists of history, leaving behind a legacy of scandal and a court forever changed. King John, for his part, weathered the storm, but the taint of perversion clung to him like a shroud, coloring his reign with shades of scandal and shame. As we turn our gaze across the channel, we find ourselves in the opulent court of Philip IV of France. Known as Philip the Fair for his striking good looks, the king harbored a dark obsession that would come to define his rule. The object of his desire was a woman known only as Joan the Lingerer, a courtier of mysterious origins and bewitching beauty. Philip's infatuation with Joan was all-consuming, bordering on madness. He would spend hours in her company, neglecting affairs of state and the counsel of his advisors. Whispers of witchcraft began to circulate. How else could one explain the king's complete thraldom to this common woman? Some claimed to have seen Joan brewing strange potions in the dead of night, while others swore they had witnessed her speaking in tongues during secret rituals. The queen, long accustomed to her husband's dalliances, found herself consumed by jealousy. She plotted in the shadows, gathering allies and seeking ways to rid the court of her rival. But Joan's influence over the king seemed unbreakable, a spell woven so tightly that even the bonds of marriage could not compete. As tensions mounted, the very stability of the kingdom hung in the balance. Courtiers took sides, forming factions that threatened to plunge France into civil war. Philip, oblivious to the chaos swirling around him, remained fixated on Joan, his obsession growing more fervent with each passing day. In hushed tones, it was said that the king had taken to locking himself away with Joan for days on end, emerging only to issue bizarre decrees and proclamations. The once fair monarch had become a shell of his former self, a puppet dancing to the tune of his perverse desires. The fate of Joan the Lingerer remains shrouded in mystery. Some say she was secretly executed on the orders of the queen, while others claim she simply vanished one night, leaving behind nothing but the lingering scent of her perfume and a king driven mad by loss. Our journey through the annals of royal perversion takes us now to the snow-covered lands of Sweden, where Eric XIV reigned in a haze of opium-induced madness. The king, known for his mercurial temperament and flights of fancy, had developed a taste for the exotic drug, introduced to him by traveling merchants from the East. Under the influence of opium, Eric's already fragile grip on reality began to slip. He became convinced that he possessed magical powers, capable of communing with spirits and bending the very fabric of the universe to his will. The royal court became a playground for his deranged experiments, with courtiers forced to participate in bizarre rituals and arcane ceremonies. Nights at the palace took on a dreamlike quality, filled with swirling smoke and the haunting melodies of foreign instruments. Eric, his eyes wild and unfocused, would hold court in a state of near undress, surrounded by a harem of both men and women chosen for their exotic beauty. Whispers of orgiastic rituals spread throughout the kingdom. It was said that the king engaged in acts of such depravity that even the most hardened of sinners would blush to hear them described. Some claimed to have witnessed Eric transforming into various animals during these drug-fueled nights, while others swore he could levitate and pass through solid walls. The king's advisors, desperate to maintain some semblance of order, struggled to keep Eric's excesses hidden from the public eye. But as his behavior grew more erratic and his demands more outlandish, it became increasingly difficult to contain the scandal. Reports of human sacrifices and dark magic began to circulate. Peasants spoke in hushed tones of strange lights emanating from the palace windows and unearthly screams echoing through the night. Fear gripped the nation as rumors spread that the king had made a pact with demonic forces, selling his soul in exchange for ultimate power and pleasure. Eric's reign spiraled further into chaos and debauchery. He became paranoid, convinced that his enemies were plotting against him at every turn. In his opium-addled state, he ordered executions on a whim, seeing treachery in even the most loyal of servants. The once proud kingdom of Sweden teetered on the brink of collapse, its monarch lost in a haze of drug-induced perversion and madness. It was only a matter of time before the fragile facade crumbled, leaving behind a legacy of scandal that would echo through the ages. As we emerge from the depths of these sordid tales, we are left to ponder the nature of power and the corrupting influence it wields. These kings, entrusted with the fate of nations, succumbed to their basest desires, leaving behind a trail of scandal and ruin. Their stories serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of morality in the face of unchecked authority. In the shadowy recesses of history, their legacies linger, a testament to the darkness that can lurk within the hearts of even the most exalted of rulers. As palace curtains close and secret lips whisper forbidden alliances, we'll move deeper into courtly decadence. Next, we venture into love, betrayal, and royal punishment hidden behind crown and cloak. In the shadowy corridors of medieval castles, whispers of scandal and forbidden desires echo through time. The air is thick with the scent of intrigue as we delve into the hidden chambers of history's most notorious monarchs. Our journey begins with Edward II of England, a king whose heart belonged not to his queen, but to his male companion, Piers Gaveston. Their relationship, a delicate dance of passion and politics, sent ripples through the royal court. Gaveston, with his piercing eyes and silver tongue, held the king's favor like a precious jewel. As moonlight filtered through stained glass windows, Edward and Gaveston would steal moments together, their laughter echoing softly in the stone halls. But their happiness was not to last. The nobles, their faces twisted with jealousy and disgust, plotted in hushed tones. They saw Gaveston as a threat, a commoner who had risen too high. The whispers grew louder, until they could no longer be ignored. Gaveston was banished, torn from Edward's side like a limb from a body. The king's anguished cries were said to have echoed through the castle for days. But fate had not finished with this ill-starred pair. Gaveston returned, drawn back by the magnetic pull of his royal lover. Their reunion was brief and bittersweet, for the noble's patience had worn thin. In a brutal act of violence, Gaveston was seized and executed, his life snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Edward's reign never recovered from this loss. He stumbled through the years that followed, a shadow of his former self. The political fallout was devastating, culminating in Edward's own tragic demise. Some say his ghost still wanders the halls of Berkeley Castle, searching for his lost love. As we turn the page of history, we find ourselves in the opulent world of Philip V of France. The Sun King's great-grandson, Philip was a man of insatiable appetites and dark secrets. Behind the gilded facades of his palaces lay hidden chambers where debauchery reigned supreme. Versailles, that glittering jewel of French monarchy, held more than met the eye. Beneath its manicured gardens and mirrored halls, a labyrinth of secret passages led to rooms where morality was left at the door. Here, in the flickering candlelight, Philip indulged his every whim. Courtiers whispered of orgies that lasted for days, of exotic pleasures brought from the far corners of the empire. The air was heavy with the scent of perfume and sin, as nobles and servants alike succumbed to the king's desires. Philip, his eyes gleaming with dark fire, presided over these bacchanalian feasts like a pagan god. But even as he reveled in his hidden world, Philip maintained a facade of piety and propriety. By day, he attended Mass and held court with solemn dignity. By night, he shed his royal robes and embraced the darkness that lurked within his soul. The contrast between Philip's public and private lives was stark. Those who knew of his secret chambers lived in fear of his capricious nature. To speak of what transpired behind closed doors was to invite ruin or worse. And so the whispers remained just that, whispers carried on the wind and lost to time. Yet another layer of intrigue unfolds as we delve into the shadowy world of the Templar royals and their forbidden affairs. The Knights Templar, those warrior monks who straddled the line between sacred and profane, held a peculiar fascination for many medieval monarchs. In dimly lit chapels and secluded monasteries, kings and Templars forged alliances that went far beyond the realm of politics. These knighted clerics, with their air of mystery and spiritual power, drew royals like moths to a flame. The line between devotion and desire blurred in the incense-laden air. One such tale speaks of a nameless king who became enthralled by a Templar Grand Master. Their clandestine meetings, shrouded in secrecy and ritual, became the stuff of legend. Some whispered of unholy rites performed under the cover of darkness, of sacred vows twisted to serve earthly passions. The Templars, with their vast wealth and influence, were both ally and threat to the crown. Kings sought their favor, even as they feared their power. This delicate balance often tipped into realms of intimacy that defied the norms of the time. In remote commanderies, far from prying eyes, royals and Templars would come together in ways that blurred the lines between spiritual and carnal devotion. The white robes of the order, symbol of purity, became stained with the wine of excess and the sweat of forbidden embraces. These liaisons were not without consequence. As rumors spread, the church and nobility grew increasingly wary of the Templars' influence. The seeds of the order's eventual downfall were sown in these whispered alliances, these stolen moments of passion between crowned heads and tonsured knights. The fall of the Templars sent shockwaves through royal courts across Europe. Kings who had once sought their company now turned their backs, desperate to distance themselves from the taint of scandal. Yet in secret chambers and hidden alcoves, the memory of those forbidden affairs lingered like a bittersweet perfume. As we draw our journey through the shadows of medieval royalty to a close, we are left with a tapestry of desire, power, and tragedy. These kings, whose names echo through the halls of history, were more than mere rulers. They were men of flesh and blood, driven by passions that defied the conventions of their time. Edward II's love for Gaveston, a flame that burned too bright for the world to bear. Philip V's secret chambers, where decadence reigned and morality was but a distant memory. The Templar royals and their clandestine affairs, a dance of power and desire that would ultimately lead to ruin. In the end, these stories remind us that even those who wear the crown are not immune to the complexities of the human heart. Their perversions, as history has labeled them, were perhaps simply the expression of desires too powerful to be contained by the strictures of their era. As the last echoes of their whispered secrets fade into the mists of time, we are left to wonder how many more tales of forbidden love and hidden passions lie buried in the annals of history, waiting to be unearthed. The shadows of medieval castles hold their secrets close, and some stories may never see the light of day. But for those with ears to hear and eyes to see, the traces of these most perverted kings linger still. In the crumbling stones of ancient fortresses, in the faded ink of long-forgotten chronicles, their stories wait to be discovered anew. And so, the whispers continue, carried on the wind of history, forever enticing us with the promise of scandal and the allure of the forbiddens. Behind every royal caress, there was a threat, a power, a consequence. Now, let us descend further, into chambers where cruelty was mistaken for affection, and pleasure became punishment. In the shadowy corridors of medieval castles, whispers of royal depravity echo through time. The gilded thrones of Europe concealed dark secrets, where power and perversion intertwined like serpents in the night. Let us delve into the hidden chambers of history, where the most twisted monarchs indulged their basest desires. Louis XI of France, known as the Spider King, wove a web of cruelty that ensnared both friend and foe. His obsession with torture was not merely a tool of statecraft, but a private pleasure that consumed his waking hours. In the depths of his castle, it is said that Louis would spend long nights devising new instruments of pain, his eyes gleaming with a fervor that bordered on madness. The king's personal chambers were adorned not with tapestries of heroic deeds, but with intricate diagrams of torture devices. Courtiers whispered of the muffled screams that echoed through the stone walls, carrying the anguish of those who had displeased their sovereign. Louis would often retire to his private study, poring over ancient texts that detailed methods of extracting confessions and breaking the human spirit. It was not uncommon for the king to disguise himself and wander the streets of Paris, seeking out those he deemed worthy of his special attention. The unfortunate souls who caught his eye would vanish into the night, never to be seen again. Some say that Louis kept a journal of his experiments, detailing each victim's endurance and the effectiveness of his cruel innovations. As the years passed, Louis XI's reputation for sadism grew, casting a pall of fear over his court. Even his most trusted advisors lived in constant dread, never knowing when they might fall victim to their master's tortured obsessions. The king's legacy became one of terror, his name spoken only in hushed tones long after his death. Across the Pyrenees, another monarch harbored secrets of a different nature. Ferdinand I of Aragon, outwardly a paragon of Christian virtue, concealed a harem that would have scandalized the papal court. Behind the thick walls of his private apartments, a world of sensual delights flourished, hidden from the prying eyes of his jealous queens. The king's taste for both male and female companions was an open secret among the inner circle of his court. Young nobles vied for positions as royal cupbearers or personal attendants, knowing that such roles could lead to far more intimate encounters with their sovereign. Ferdinand's chambers were a labyrinth of hidden passages and secret rooms, where he could indulge his desires away from the watchful gaze of his official consorts. One particularly favored courtier, a golden-haired youth named Alfonso, was said to hold sway over the king's heart and mind. Whispers circulated of midnight trysts in secluded gardens, where Ferdinand would compose poetry in praise of his beloved's beauty. The queen, consumed by jealousy, plotted endlessly to uncover evidence of her husband's infidelities. But the king's network of loyal servants ensured that his secrets remained safe. As Ferdinand aged, his appetite for new conquests only grew. He would send trusted emissaries to the far corners of his realm, seeking out the most beautiful and exotic individuals to join his private collection. The harem became a melting pot of cultures and languages, with dancers from Moorish Andalusia mingling with fair-skinned beauties from the northern provinces. The king's insatiable desires eventually led to his downfall, as rival factions within the court used knowledge of his indiscretions to manipulate policy and curry favor. In his final years, Ferdinand became a prisoner of his own passions, unable to trust anyone as paranoia and lust warred within his aging mind. Yet perhaps the most intriguing tale of royal perversion comes from the court of Alfonso X of Castile, known as the Wise. This learned monarch's fascination with astrology took on a decidedly carnal aspect, blending the mystical arts with erotic ritual in ways that would have shocked even the most libertine of his contemporaries. Alfonso's private observatory was not merely a place of scientific inquiry, but a temple to the sensual power of the celestial bodies. The king believed that aligning sexual acts with the movements of the planets could unlock hidden knowledge and enhance physical pleasure beyond mortal limits. He surrounded himself with a cadre of astrologers and courtesans, each skilled in the art of celestial sexual fusion. On nights when Venus aligned with Mars, the king would host elaborate orgies, where participants were adorned with symbols of the zodiac painted in gold leaf upon their naked skin. Incense burned in copper braziers, filling the air with heady aromas as Alfonso led his followers in complex rituals designed to channel cosmic energies into earthly ecstasy. The king's personal grimoire, a leather-bound tome kept under lock and key, contained detailed instructions for sexual positions corresponding to each house of the zodiac. It was said that Alfonso would consult this book religiously, planning his liaisons with the precision of a military campaign. One of the most controversial aspects of Alfonso's astrological pleasures was his belief in the power of lunar cycles to enhance fertility. He would time his couplings with various mistresses to coincide with specific phases of the moon, hoping to conceive children imbued with celestial gifts. This practice led to a proliferation of royal bastards, each claiming a cosmic heritage that threatened the stability of the succession. As Alfonso's obsession with astrological eroticism grew, so too did the extravagance of his rituals. He commissioned intricate mechanical devices that mimicked the movements of the heavens, using them as centerpieces for ever more elaborate sexual ceremonies. The line between astronomy and pornography blurred in the king's mind, leading to the creation of star charts that doubled as guides to exotic lovemaking techniques. The church, long suspicious of Alfonso's intellectual pursuits, became increasingly alarmed by reports of these blasphemous practices. Papal envoys were dispatched to investigate, only to find themselves drawn into the intoxicating world of celestial hedonism. Some returned to Rome with wild tales of orgiastic excess, while others disappeared entirely, seduced by the promise of divine pleasure. In the end, Alfonso X's legacy was a complex tapestry of wisdom and wantonness, his brilliant mind forever tainted by the excesses of his flesh. The astrological texts he commissioned continue to be studied by scholars, who must carefully separate the genuine scientific insights from the fevered imaginings of a king consumed by lust and starlight. As we draw back the veil on these sordid tales of royal depravity, we are reminded that power has always been a potent aphrodisiac. The kings of medieval Europe, cloaked in divine right and absolute authority, often found themselves slaves to their basest instincts. Their stories serve as a warning of the corrupting influence of unchecked desire and the thin line that separates greatness from madness in the annals of history. In the shadowy halls of medieval power, whispers of desire and scandal echo through time. Secrets etched in stone and hidden behind gilded thrones speak of royal appetites that knew no bounds. As we delve into the depths of history's most licentious monarchs, prepare to uncover tales that blur the lines between power and perversion. Scandinavian runes, once used to invoke the gods, now reveal a different kind of worship. In secluded groves and mist-shrouded fjords, kings of old left their mark in ways both subtle and shocking. Runestones, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain, bear witness to carnal acts that would make even the most hardened warrior blush. One such stone, hidden deep in a forgotten forest, speaks of a king whose lust knew no bounds. Its cryptic symbols, when deciphered, tell of midnight orgies and forbidden rituals. The runes whisper of bodies entwined like serpents, of royal flesh pressed against cold stone altars. These were not mere flights of fancy, but sacred rites believed to ensure a bountiful harvest and victory in battle. Yet it was not only on stone that these kings left their mark. Thrones, those seats of power and authority, held their own shameful secrets. Ornate carvings on wooden armrests depicted scenes that would scandalize even the most worldly of courtiers. One such throne, now lost to time, was said to be adorned with images so explicit that it could only be viewed by the king and his most trusted advisors. These Scandinavian rulers, their names now lost to history, reveled in a world where power and pleasure were inextricably linked. Their legacy lives on in hushed tales, passed down through generations. In the knowing glances exchanged by those who tend to ancient sites, and in the very earth itself, which seems to pulse with the echoes of long-ago passions. As we journey south, the air grows heavy with the scent of exotic spices and forbidden fruit. In the heart of the Byzantine Empire, behind high walls and carefully tended hedges, lie gardens that once played host to the most decadent of imperial diversions. Whispers still circulate of Emperor Constantine VII's private paradise, a place where the lines between reality and fantasy blurred like watercolors on silk. Here, amid carefully cultivated roses and shimmering fountains, the most exclusive and scandalous gatherings took place under cover of darkness. Masked figures would glide through moonlit paths, their identities concealed, but their intentions clear. The soft rustle of silk against skin, the gentle splash of wine in golden goblets, and the muffled sounds of pleasure created a symphony of sensuality that echoed through the night. These were not mere parties, but elaborate rituals of flesh and spirit. It was said that the emperor himself would preside over these gatherings, his face hidden behind a mask of pure gold, his body draped in diaphanous robes that left little to the imagination. Attendees spoke in hushed tones of the miracles they witnessed in those gardens, of men transformed into beasts, of women who could command the very elements with a single touch. But it was the feasts that truly set these gatherings apart. Tables groaned under the weight of exotic delicacies, each morsel designed to inflame the senses and lower inhibitions. fruits shaped like intimate parts of the body, glistening with honey and rosewater. Meats so tender they seemed to melt on the tongue, infused with aphrodisiacs from the farthest reaches of the empire. And as the night wore on and inhibitions fell away like discarded veils, the true nature of these gatherings would reveal itself. Bodies intertwined in the soft grass, lips met in feverish kisses, and acts of such depravity were performed that they could never be spoken of in the light of day. Yet for all the whispered tales and scandalous rumors, concrete evidence of these imperial indulgences remains elusive. The gardens themselves have long since been reclaimed by nature, their secrets buried beneath centuries of soil and silence. But those who know where to look can still find traces. A fragment of a mask here, a tarnished goblet there, hinting at the decadence that once flourished in this most private of paradises. Our journey through the annals of royal perversion takes us now to the final resting places of history's most licentious rulers. In unmarked tombs and forgotten crypts, the secrets of the past lie waiting to be uncovered. These are not the grand mausoleums of virtuous kings and pious queens. No, these are the hidden graves of monarchs whose appetites and excesses were too great to be acknowledged in death. Their final resting places are shrouded in mystery, known only to a select few who guard their locations with the same fervor that the kings once guarded their most intimate secrets. One such tomb, its location known only through cryptic clues left in ancient texts, is said to contain a treasure trove of erotic artifacts. Preserved by some arcane magic, or simply by the dry air of its subterranean chamber, these objects offer a tantalizing glimpse into the private world of a ruler whose name has been struck from official records. Delicate figurines carved from ivory and jade depict acts so explicit that even the most jaded archaeologist would blush. Scrolls, their ink still vibrant after centuries, detail rituals and practices that blur the line between the sacred and the profane. And perhaps most intriguing of all, a collection of personal effects, combs, mirrors, and intimate garments that speak to the human side of these larger-than-life figures. But it is not just objects that these tombs contain. Some whisper of more macabre contents, of bodies preserved through dark arts, their flesh still supple, their faces frozen in expressions of eternal ecstasy. These are not mere corpses, but vessels of power, conduits through which the libidinous energy of their former occupants still flows. Scholars and treasure hunters alike have sought these hidden burial sites, driven by the promise of riches both material and intellectual. But the few who have claimed to find them speak of curses and supernatural guardians, of traps designed to ensnare the body and corrupt the soul. Perhaps it is better that these tombs remain hidden, their secrets locked away for eternity. For in death, as in life, these kings continue to exert a powerful influence over those who would seek to uncover their most intimate truths. As we emerge from the depths of history, blinking in the harsh light of the present, we are left to ponder the legacy of these most perverted of kings. Their stories, shrouded in myth and whispered in shadows, serve as a reminder of the complex nature of power and desire. In the end, perhaps it is not the acts themselves that fascinate us, but the very human impulses that drove these rulers to such extremes. In their excesses and their secrets, we see reflections of our own hidden desires, our own struggles with the boundaries of morality and pleasure. And so, as the last echoes of our journey fade away, we are left with more questions than answers. What other secrets lie buried in the annals of history? What hidden chambers of the heart remain unexplored? Only time, that most patient of archaeologists, will tell. In the shadowy corridors of medieval castles, whispers of forbidden desires echoed through time. Kings, those anointed by God to rule, were not immune to the temptations of the flesh. Their lusts, hidden behind ornate tapestries and locked chamber doors, would shape the course of history. The consequences of their unbridled passions were far-reaching and devastating. Political scandals erupted, shattering alliances and toppling dynasties. Noble families found themselves exiled, cast out from the glittering world of the court into the harsh reality of a life without royal favor. Murder, that most final of solutions, stalked the halls of power, silencing those who knew too much or posed a threat to carefully crafted facades of propriety. But perhaps the most tragic consequence was the loss of legacies. Great kings, remembered not for their triumphs or wisdom, but for the scandals that tainted their reigns. Their names became synonymous with depravity, whispered as cautionary tales to warn against the dangers of unchecked desire. Yet why do these stories of royal perversion still captivate us, centuries later? They offer a glimpse into the complex interplay of power, repression, and human psychology within the medieval court. These were not simply tales of lust, but intricate dances of politics and passion, where the personal and the political became inextricably entwined. The medieval court was a pressure cooker of ambition and desire. Nobles jostled for position, acutely aware that a king's favor could mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. In this charged atmosphere, sexuality became a weapon, a tool for manipulation and control. Kings, supposedly above such base impulses, found themselves ensnared in webs of their own making. The strict moral codes of the time only served to heighten the allure of the forbiddens. The more something was repressed, the more powerfully it manifested when finally unleashed. Kings, accustomed to having their every whim indulged, chafed against the constraints of propriety. Their transgressions became acts of rebellion against the very system that granted them their power. These stories of royal perversion resonate even in our modern world. They serve as a dark mirror, reflecting our own societal struggles with desire, secrecy, and authority. The shadow history of these kings tells us uncomfortable truths about human nature and the corrupting influence of absolute power. In the quiet corners of our minds, we recognize the universal themes at play: the tension between public duty and private desire, the intoxicating allure of the forbiddens, the lengths to which people will go to protect their secrets and preserve their power. These are not merely historical curiosities, but timeless explorations of the human condition. Moreover, these tales of royal scandal remind us that those in positions of authority are not infallible. They are subject to the same weaknesses and temptations as any mortal. This realization serves as a potent warning against the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of accountability, even for those who sit upon thrones. The secrecy that shrouded these royal indiscretions speaks to our own complex relationship with privacy and public image. In an age of constant scrutiny and social media, we can perhaps empathize with the desperate attempts to keep certain aspects of one's life hidden from prying eyes. The fear of exposure, of having one's darkest secrets laid bare for all to judge, is a fear that transcends time. Yet, paradoxically, there is also a voyeuristic thrill in peeling back the layers of propriety to reveal the raw, unvarnished truth beneath. We are drawn to these stories of royal perversion precisely because they shatter the carefully constructed illusions of majesty and divine right. They humanize figures that history has often rendered remote and unknowable. As we delve into the sordid tales of these medieval kings, we must remember that history is rarely black and white. The same monarch who indulged in scandalous behavior might also have been a skilled diplomat or a patron of the arts. The complexity of human nature defies simple categorization, and it is in this nuanced understanding that true insight lies. The legacy of these perverted kings extends far beyond their own time. Their actions set in motion chains of events that would reshape kingdoms and alter the course of history. Marriages were made and broken, alliances shifted, and wars were fought, all because of passions that could not be contained within the bounds of propriety. In examining these stories, we are forced to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of power and morality. Is a king's private life truly private when his actions can have such far-reaching consequences? Where does one draw the line between personal freedom and public responsibility? These are questions that continue to resonate in our own time as we grapple with the public and private lives of those who lead us. The most perverted kings in medieval history serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked authority. Their stories are cautionary tales, warning us of the perils that await when power is allowed to corrupt absolutely. Yet they also offer a glimpse into the complex tapestry of human desire and ambition, reminding us that even those who wear crowns are not immune to the frailties of the human heart. As we reflect on these dark chapters of history, we are left with a sense of both fascination and unease. The allure of the forbiddance, the intoxication of power, the desperate need for secrecy, these are themes that continue to captivate and disturb us in equal measure. In the end, perhaps the greatest lesson we can draw from these tales of royal perversion is the importance of tempering power with wisdom and desire with compassion. For in the shadowy recesses of history, where whispers of scandal still linger, we find not just stories of lust and betrayal, but profound truths about the nature of power, the complexities of human desire, and the eternal struggle between our public duties and our private passions. These kings, for all their flaws and failings, hold up a mirror to our own society, challenging us to examine the darker corners of our own hearts and the institutions that govern our lives. Now let the candle flicker fade, rest with these whispered echoes of human nature. Choose to explore again tomorrow, to uncover more stories that once ruled kingdoms in silence.